Hello and welcome to episode 15 of DataCube's free online training resource. In this episode we're again talking about Google Data Studio, and we're talking about the concepts of data transformation in Google Data Studio. So primarily we're going to be talking about how to add some data in, how to blend some data sets together, and how to create additional fields, calculations, metrics. Okay, we're back in Google Data Studio. I've opened up a brand new report, so let's name this EP15 Transformations. So, blank report, no data, no charts. So let's start by adding some data and file upload, and I've actually got a few in here already which I've just imported. So we're working on that population, employment rate, GDP data. Last week I added it already blended together, so to rejoin them, that was actually just a copy and paste job in Excel or using a VLOOKUP. So I'm going to add in population like that. So now if I click on the chart, I've got my population data. Now I'm going to start with this blend data here. So what I'm going to do is add another data source. So we've got our population data, and I'm going to look for GDP. Now what we're doing here is joining two data sets together. So we're going to be joining GDP to population. So population on the left here is kind of our base table, and we want to join on GDP. So the way we can do that is we need matching fields. Now we don't have matching IDs or anything like that. It's a very simple data set, but we do have years. So in both tables we have year fields, and those data sets can match on year. So first off, join keys. Already in here is population year. So from population CSV we want to join year, and in GDP CSV we want to join year. So if I just drag GDP year in here, so over here on the right we can see what is now in our blended data set. So it's blended data 3. So included dimension metrics, we've got population year, this one, and a record count, which is that sort of automatic field that gets populated for how many rows are in our table. We won't have GDP year because they're joined on together, so we don't want duplicate fields. So it just keeps the original population year on that base table. But we'd also like to see our two main metrics, so population, so let's drag that into metrics, and we'd also like to see GDP, so let's drag that into metrics on this side. You see when I do that, it updates this data source name on the right, so we now have a year, population, and GDP. So we're going to save on that. Let's see what happens. So we have a table, and here we go, it's populated. So at the moment here we've got year, these dimensions. So I move population and GDP down into metrics, so it's summing those up. So yeah, we've got our years, we've got GDP, we've got population, and how many rows for each of those. So I'm going to get rid of that, which is that automatic field that gets generated. And we can see here we've got 49 different rows, and that's how Google Data Studio. So instead of just making the table infinite and a scroll, you can sort of sideways scroll as the default. So we've now actually joined two data sets together, which means we can now use fields from multiple tables at the same time in the same chart, or create metrics of the combination of fields from two tables. So we started with one table, joined on another one, and added metrics from both. So what if we want to combine some metrics? Now we've joined them together. So what we can do is we can add a new metric. If you press this plus sign on the metrics, or add a new dimension. So this allows you to add something into the fields, but at the bottom here we can create a new field altogether, and we get this nice panel up. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide one by the other, so we're going to create a ratio. And what we want to do is we're going to sum population like this, and you can actually click on the field to add it in. And we're going to divide the sum of population by the sum of GDP. And that will spin around, and yep, we want that to be a numeric field, and we're going to set that as a percentage, and we're going to click apply, and let's just test and see what that would do. Didn't think that would. So if we leave that as a number, we've got our ratio now, press apply on that, and now we've got a brand new field called ratio. So what if we want to add our third data source into the mix as well? So I'm going to click back on my chart, go back to blended data. So I'm editing that data source. So we've got our population, we've got our GDP. What if we want to add a third one? So if I add a third one, and the data that we had last week was also including employment rates. So if I click on that emp CSV, which I've just imported into Google Data Studio as well. So our join key, again, it needs to be year, so let's move in emp year. And we can see it hasn't added anything, so we want that employment rate, so let's add that into metrics. And now we've got our emp rate, so we've got our initial year, and then our population, GDP, emp rate, and the record count. So save that. And all changes saved, so we can close this panel down, and we can see emp rate has been added into the mix. So let's add that in, and here we go, we've got our 71.8, our employment rates here as well. And if we wanted to make another metric, so create a new field, and let's call this ratio 2. So the sum of population, now we want to divide that by the sum of employment rate as a number. Let's apply that change, and that's ratio 2. So looking at the ratio between population and employment rate. So that was a quick whiz tour of some basic transformations you can do in Google Data Studio. We've added in some separate CSV tables, and we've blended those together using Google's own sort of blend, edit data source blend. So we've actually joined two back onto our base table here, where we've been able to use fields from multiple tables and create metrics using a combination of metrics from multiple tables. So I hope you enjoyed that. We'll be back again next week to carry on our Google Data Studio theme. So look forward to speaking to you then. Thanks.